Hello, friends, family, AA members, non-AA members. This is my first video in a 6-part series of how not only to get sober, but to stay sober. First, who am I to say this method works? Who am I to make these claims? I'll explain who I am and just how much can change in a few years. A little over 4 years ago, I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps. I was proud, I was confident. It didn't only take a few months for all of that to go away. I began to struggle with anxiety, depression, alcohol abuse, drinking on a daily basis. I then began to contemplate suicide, and on July of 2015, I acted on it. In a drunken rage and stupor, the police were called to my house to talk me out of shooting myself. I was surrounded by 12 or 15 officers while I sat in my car with a loaded gun. I spoke to my mother on the phone, who I then told I wasn't going to kill myself. I was going to have the police do it for me. So I got out of the car and I began to raise the gun in the direction of the police, who did exactly what I would have done if I were in their shoes, and opened fire. I ended up being shot 6 times and rendered one of my arms only half functional. And bleeding out in my parents' front yard, in front of my entire family. Of course, when I woke up in the hospital, I was on every pain medication under the sun. I'd finally found the answer to my alcohol and drinking problems: drugs. In less than a year, I went from being a proud Marine Corps veteran to a suicidal drug addict. My obsession with drugs from there only grew. It turned into lying, stealing from my family and friends just to get what I wanted. I ended up going in and out of jobs, but one of the longest jobs I held was, in a year, I went from, again, being a Marine Corps veteran to cleaning up human shit and used needles on my hands and knees in the abandoned houses in downtown Baltimore. I went in and out of jobs and in and out of a relationship for almost 2 years, just miserably floating through life. Move on to about 2 years ago, when we found out that my daughter was on the way. And I made a choice, just as I made a choice to start using drugs. I wanted to be an excellent father. I wanted to give being a dad my everything. And no, not just your average, just their dad, but I wanted to be the absolute best to my daughter, who means absolutely everything to me. It took only 2 years for me to completely rebuild my life, to construct an incredible future for me and her. In less than 2 years, I went from fighting just to be able to see my daughter for an hour or two at the mall to having full custody of her. In less than 2 years, I went from scraping up human filth and used needles off the floor on my hands and knees to wearing a suit and tie to work every day, to have my own office, to be able to counsel families, all while making an incredibly good living for me and her. In my first year of sales, I was crushing it at bonuses and quotas. In my first full year of sales, I finished 9th in the entire country in total sales. I went from bleeding out in my parents' front yard to raising a daughter as a single father with 1.5 functioning arms. Drug abuse, anxiety, depression have all become a thing of the past. This all stems from one thing, and the first part to getting sober is you need to find a purpose. Finding a purpose sets the foundation for everything I will talk about in these next 5 videos. It took some serious thought for me to realize what my purpose is. To look at life and realize that this is the only life that we live. There are no redos. That you have one chance to live your life in a meaningful way. to live life without the burden and restrictions of things like drug abuse, anxiety, depression. That you have one life, and you can choose whether it be spent in a miserable career that depresses you and you hate, or in a career that you love, you succeed in, and brings you happiness. I had to wake up to the fact that you have one and only one chance to raise your children. That you have one chance to give them everything, to be a parent, to be there for them, to give them the best chance to succeed in life. When getting sober, the main point behind finding a purpose is that it needs to be something that when you wake up in the morning, you look forward to it more than you do picking up that first drink or using that first drug. It needs to be something that you're willing to fight for every single day. If your purpose is just to get sober with no idea why or reason behind it, you will fail. It needs to be something that you're willing to set weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly goals to achieve. Back in 2017, I bought one of these little notebooks, and each month I would fill it out and track how I was progressing. It brings you a lot more satisfaction when you can actually see how you're progressing, when you write it down. It needs to be something that brings out your willpower, your effort, and determination. Alcoholics Anonymous and these 12-step groups love to demote all of this, these key characteristics and traits that are needed to get sober. This softer, newer, self-entitled generation are so easy to fall into this. They love to preach, oh, willpower kills, willpower will kill you. No, not enough willpower will kill you. They preach right from their text that they wish they could find an easier, softer way. It's harder to hold on to things that you didn't have to work hard to get. These programs like to devalue things like setting goals and preaching to people, oh, just for today, just live for today, take no thought for tomorrow, just let go and let God. You need to find a purpose that you are willing and you are able to set goals to achieve. I remember when fighting for custody for my daughter, my sponsor telling me, just let it go, just focus on me, it's out of your hands. Excuse me, but fuck that. I threw out my step work, I threw that to the side, and I started working on a parenting plan. Rather than spending an hour each night at a meeting talking about drugs and alcohol, I spent my time researching and taking notes on what judges look for in a custody case. Rather than spending countless hours on the phone with my sponsor, I started calling lawyers. Because of this, I was able to gain more and more time with what was truly important to me. Without a purpose, without a reason to live, without a reason to get sober, you're nothing. You have to see it, whether you're a member or not. In these AA and NA meetings, you see these people that are just floating through life, that are just going through the motions. So many of these members get trapped in this just for today nonsense that they lose sight of any type of future. They lose sight of all of the reasons of why not to go back to drugs. Like I said in the beginning, your purpose is going to set the foundation for everything I talk about in these next 5 videos. Your purpose can start off as something small and grow into something bigger. Maybe your purpose is to be a parent to your children again. Maybe your purpose is that your children have disowned you, and your goal is to be able to reconnect with them. Maybe you're in a miserable career that you're depressed in and you're not going anywhere in, and your goal in life is to find a career that'll bring you success and bring you happiness. No one's purpose in life is to become a statistic on the Overdose Awareness Board. Take it from me. Being on the other side of the table of a mother that has to plan the funeral of her child due to an overdose or suicide is one of the most excruciating things I have ever been through. Find your purpose in life. Find the willpower to live. follow these next 5 steps, and you will not only beat drug abuse, but you will make it a thing of the past. No living under the fear of relapse and temptation. No letting drugs and alcohol dictate the places you can go, friends and family you can associate with. No countless hours wasted in a church basement obsessing over and worshiping drugs and alcohol. I mean done and buried, so that you can live your life without these burdens and restraints. Part 2 of the series is going to be in a week. I'll see you guys then.